video game, a 107 speed rating beats a 105.
Oh, every single time, yeah.
Right. You look at a racing program, you scan the past performances, and you find the biggest, shiniest number on the page, and your brain just points and says, there it is. Case closed.
It's easy. We crave that binary simplicity.
Exactly. We want the world to be easily categorized by just a single data point. But then you take those exact same numbers and you drop them into a $1 million grade 1 sprint on the dirt.
Oh, boy.
You put them under the blinding pressure of Derby Day at Churchill Downs, and suddenly that simple math equation it shatters into a million pieces.
Because raw speed in a vacuum is a myth. It just is. The moment those gates open, you are no longer dealing with a spreadsheet.
No, you're really not.
You're dealing with a highly volatile, completely dynamic physical ecosystem. It's fluid dynamics, it's tactical warfare out there.
Right.
If you're sitting in the grandstand holding a ticket based purely on a horse's fastest previous time, you're completely ignoring the most critical factor in modern dirt racing, which is, the literal geometry of the field.
Okay, let's unpack this, because today we are staring down Churchill Downs Race 10.
A monster of a race.
It really is. It's a 7-furlong test for 4-year-olds and upward. The purse is $1 million. So the stakes could not be higher here.
Absolutely not.
And our mission today is to strip away the illusion of those raw speed figures. We are going to completely break down the race shape. We're going to analyze the intense spatial pressure of this specific field, pit the early speed types against the deep closers, and definitively identify the single most advantaged horse on the track.
We are going deep on this one.
We really are. You're stepping into the war room with us. We've got the brilliant past performances. We have the specialized racing form report, and we're going to tear this 7-furlong puzzle down to the studs.
Let's do it.
So, starting with the physical environment itself, the data we have on the 7-furlong track bias at Churchill Downs isn't just like a slight lean. It's a structural mandate.
Oh, the numbers dictate everything that follows. When you look at the meet totals for 7-furlong dirt races at Churchill, the data reveals a massive 65% speed bias.
Right. 65.
Right. That is an incredibly heavy thumb on the scale. And to understand how that actually manifests on the track, we have to look at how Brisnick categorizes the horses.
Okay, yeah. Walk us through that.
So they break the run styles down into 4 distinct profiles. You have E for early, EP for early presser, you've got P for presser, and S for sustained, which is your deep closer.
Got it.
The impact values attached to these profiles are where the entire narrative of this race really begins to take shape.
Right, and if you're looking at the data, an impact value of 1.0 is exactly average, right? Like the horse is winning its fair statistical share based on field size.
Exactly.
So anything above 1.00 means the profile is overperforming the math. Anything below means it's bleeding win equity.
Yep, you're losing value.
So the E-types, the pure early speed horses, they have an impact value of 0.90, winning 27% of the races. That's solid, but they're technically slightly underperforming their fair share.
Right, it's just under that 1.0 mark.
But then you look at the EP types,
the
early pressers, their impact value skyrockets to 1.22. They're winning a staggering 38% of the time at this exact distance.
And that 1.22 impact value is, it's the skeleton key to this entire race.
Also,
it tells you that the track aggressively rewards horses that are forwardly placed, but it heavily penalizes horses that have to spend all their energy actually securing the lead.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, the EP horse gets all the positional advantage of the speed bias without paying the physical toll of being the absolute pace setter.
That makes total sense.
Right, and contrast that with the S-types, the deep closers. Their impact value is a dismal 0.34.
0.34, that's terrible.
It's awful. They're winning only 12% of the time. The track architecture is actively hostile to a horse trying to come from dead last.
But we're not just looking at letters, though. Brisnick drills down even further with the PTS system, right? The early speed points.
Yeah, the PTS is crucial here.
It's a 0 to 8 scale based on the horse's running position and beaten lengths at the first call of their recent races. It's essentially like a behavioral psych profile for the horse.
That's a great way to put it. Yeah.
Right. A horse with an 8 doesn't just want the lead. It enters a state of literal panic if it doesn't have it.
Oh, they lose their minds.
Exactly. While a horse with a 0 is conditioned to just drop out the back and fall asleep for the first half mile. So we take these behavioral profiles, we look at the track bias, and then we plug it into the Racing Form Report's race read for today.
And that's where things get wild.
Yeah, the report throws up a massive red flag. It explicitly states this will not be a clean tactical race. It defines the setup as a, quote, pressure cooker.
Yeah, the precise phrasing in the report is overloaded speed without a leader. And I've got to tell you, that is the most dangerous phrase you can read in a racing form.
Really? Why is that so dangerous?
Because it means you have a concentration of horses with very high early speed points, multiple E and EP types sitting in that 4 to 8 range,
Hmm.
but you lack a singular transcendent freak of nature who can just effortlessly clear the field by 5 lengths and dictate terms.
No one's just running away with it.
Exactly. Instead, you have a critical mass of aggressive animals forced into the exact same physical space. The 65% speed bias is just whispering in the jockey's ears, demanding they get forward. But the geometry of the starting gate guarantees they're going to have to go to absolute war to get there.
Okay, think of it like a highway merge lane where 4 high-performance sports cars are all trying to occupy the exact same spot on the asphalt at 80 miles per hour.
That's exactly what it is.
You've got a Ferrari in the far outside lane trying to sweep aggressively across traffic. You've got a Lamborghini trapped in the slow lane, just redlining its engine to defend its space. They are all converging on one singular point.
And it's terrifying.
Right. Now, it's not necessarily going to end in a fiery multi-car pileup. The report clearly states this is not a guaranteed total meltdown. But absolutely no one in those cars is breathing easily.
Not for a second.
Every driver has a death grip on the steering wheel, burning up their brake pads, shredding their transmission, just surviving the friction of the merge. That is the pressure cooker. It's a prolonged state of intense physical and psychological stress.
And because that stress is sustained rather than explosive, the race fractures late, but only partially. The report makes a brilliant point here. This specific setup creates a scenario where timing beats raw speed.
Timing over speed.
Always in this setup. The horse with the biggest engine doesn't win the pressure cooker. The horse that manages the friction of the merge lane the most efficiently is the one who ultimately survives.
Well, if that's the environment, if that's the crucible we're dealing with, we really need to analyze the specific sports cars that are about to get thrown into it.
We definitely do.
We have an EP logjam, and we have a wildcard burner that is going to make this entire equation incredibly volatile. Let's start with the catalyst. The Ferrari on the outside. Point Doom.
Oh, Point Doom.
It's trained by Timothy Kreiser with Edwin Gonzalez in the irons.
Yeah. Point Doom is the match that lights the powder keg here. He is designated as an E8.
The maximum.
Right, that is the absolute maximum number of early speed points a horse can carry. The Racing Form report actually designates him as the lone true early burner in the entire field.
Wow.
This is an animal that only knows one way to run. I mean, look at his resume. He won the Carter Grade 2 at Aqueduct going 7 furlongs, and he led at every single point of call.
Wire to wire.
Exactly. Then he won the General George Grade 3 at Laurel, again, leading at every single call. He is a veteran of 31 lifetime starts with 11 wins, and his entire identity is predicated on sheer, unrelenting early dominance.
But here is the catastrophic problem for Point Doom today.
Yeah.
He drew post position 11. He is parked all the way out in the parking lot.
It's the worst possible spot for him.
It really is. If Edwin Gonzalez is sitting on an E8 horse in post 11, the playbook is just out the window. There's no nuance. There's no tactical settling. He has to ask Point Doom to sprint as hard as he can the second the doors open, just to cross over the face of 10 other horses and get to the rail.
He has no other choice.
Right. And the report flags him as the most important if-then horse in the field. If he somehow clears easily, he dictates the shape. But the historical data is brutal on lone speed attempts at 7 furlongs.
Oh, it's totally unforgiving.
The physical toll of running diagonally across the track while sprinting at maximum capacity burns a massive amount of early fuel.
The geometry just actively punishes him. If this were a flat 6 furlong sprint, maybe his sheer velocity carries him through the pain barrier. But 7 furlongs, that requires a foundational stamina reserve.
Which he's burning immediately.
Exactly. If he drains that reserve in the first quarter mile just to assert dominance over the inside horses, his cardiovascular system will start writing checks his legs can't cash by the 16th pole.
Right. He's going to hit a wall.
He is highly likely to fail. But, and this is key, his inevitable failure isn't what makes him important. It's the collateral damage he's going to cause to the horse drawn way down on the inside.
And this brings us to cornucopian. And I'm going to play the role of the public better here, because if I look at this program, I am immediately drawn to this horse.
Oh, everyone is going to be drawn to him.
Of course. He's 72 odds. He's trained by Bob Baffert, ridden by Juan J. Hernandez. He's a $1.1 million purchase sired by Into Mischief. And the stat that is going to blind, like, 80% of the betting public is his last race speed rating.
That massive 107.
Yes, he dropped a 107 speed figure, winning the San Carlos Grade 3 at Santa Anita. He worked a blistering 6 furlongs in 1.12 flat just a few days ago. Baffert hits at 37% with horses coming off a win.
The numbers are flashy.
The surface-level math screams that this is a monster. I want to bet my mortgage on him. So tell me exactly why the report says he is a massive risk.
What's fascinating here is that 107 speed figure was earned in a completely different tactical ecosystem.
Okay, explain that.
What's critical here is the concept of being cooked in the duel. Look at Cornucopian's profile. He is an EP4. He is an early presser.
Right, not a pure E8 like Point Dume.
Exactly. He wants to be aggressively placed, but his optimal trip involves tracking the pace, not being the target. In that San Carlos win, he was allowed to sit comfortably in third early on.
He had a target.
Right. He tracked moderate fractions, 22 flat for the quarter, 44 flat for the half, and then he just pounced. He had a clean, unobstructed target. But today, his reality is a nightmare.
Because of the post.
Yes. He is drawn down on the dead inside in post 2, and Point Dume, the E8, is launching like a literal missile from post 11.
The positional trap is brutal.
Yeah.
Juan Hernandez can't just gently ease Cornucopian back and politely let Point Dume cross over.
No, if he takes back from post 2 on a track with a 65% speed bias, the entire field is going to collapse down on top of him.
We'll get buried.
Completely buried on the rail behind a wall of horses. He has absolutely no choice but to aggressively use Cornucopian's natural speed right out of the gate, strictly to hold his ground and keep Point Dume parked on his outside.
And the moment he does that, he forfeits the EP advantage and gets dragged into an E8 fight.
Exactly. He will be forced to expend energy at a rate his physiology just isn't comfortable with. And we don't have to guess how Cornucopian reacts to that specific stress.
We've seen it before.
The past performances show us. Look at his run in the Arkansas Derby Grade 1. The comment line in the chart is devastatingly blunt. It just says, suicidal duel weakened.
Oh, wow. Suicidal duel. That's telling.
It is. When you take an EP4 and force it to act like an E8, you completely obliterate its late finishing kick.
He's the Lamborghini in the slow lane. To stop the Ferrari from cutting him off, he has to pin the throttle and redline the engine for a half mile. By the time they hit the top of the stretch and need to actually accelerate to the wire, the transmission is slipping, the engine is smoking. The 107 speed figure becomes completely irrelevant because the geometry of the race never allowed him to access it.
It's a brilliant structural trap.
It really is. And just to ensure the pressure cooker stays boiling, we have Disruptor sitting right in the middle of this mess. He's an EP2, ridden by Irad Ortiz Jr., trained by Todd Pletcher.
Disruptor is the tactical wildcard here. The EP2 profile means he isn't going to initiate the suicidal duel, but he has more than enough early foot to latch onto it.
Right.
He just won the Challenger Grade 3 at Tampa Bay, digging in late to earn a 103 speed figure. Pletcher is operating at a 33% win rate over the last 2 weeks, which is huge. But the real variable is Irad Ortiz.
He's so aggressive.
He is arguably the most aggressive positional jockey in the sport. He is not going to let Point Dume and Cornucopian get away. He is going to place Disruptor right on their flank, ensuring that even if one of the frontrunners tries to catch a breather, there is immediate physical pressure right over their shoulder.
So there's zero margin for error up front, no rest for the weary.
Yeah.
And we also have to acknowledge the bodies in the way, right?
Yeah, the noise.
Macho Music, an E6 at 301 under Javier Castellano,
Yeah.
and T.O. Elvis, an NA0 Japanese shipper at 301 who hasn't run in 4 months. The report dismisses them as just noise. They aren't going to win.
No, they're not.
Macho Music threw an 89 speed figure last out against much weaker company. But even noise has mass. Even horses that can't win take up physical space on the track.
That's a great point.
If Macho Music tries to flash his E6 speed for the first quarter mile, he's just adding another layer of friction, another obstacle that the real contenders have to navigate around or push through.
They alter the spatial dynamics. They force the elite horses to run an extra path wide or to check their stride for just a fraction of a second. In a race decided by energy conservation, every minor adjustment caused by noise horses drains the stamina reserves of the favorites.
Okay, so if the dynamic is this hostile to the front runners, if Point Dume is going to cook himself crossing over, and Cornucopian is going to get cooked defending the rail, and Disruptor is turning the screws on both of them, the natural logical leap for a better is to look the other way entirely.
Right, you look for the closers.
Exactly. If the front of the race is a suicide pact, then the back of the race must be the sanctuary. You look for the horse that's going to drop dead last, let the leaders destroy each other, and then sweep past all the exhausted bodies in the stretch.
The anchors.
Right, the report calls them the anchors, but it actively warns against them. Why are the late-running closers doomed in a setup that seemingly favors them?
It comes down to a fundamental misunderstanding of pace dynamics, specifically the difference between selective erosion and a total meltdown.
Okay, break those down for me.
Sure. In a total meltdown scenario, the frontrunners engage in a duel so violent and reckless that they completely exhaust their anaerobic capacity. They go from running 12-second furlongs early to staggering home in 14-second furlongs late.
They just hit a physical wall.
Exactly. They hit a wall. They're practically walking. When that happens, a deep closer looks like a superstar because the visual disparity in speed is massive.
But the report is adamant that a total meltdown isn't happening today.
Exactly, because you have to factor in the class of the animals involved. Cornucopian, Disruptor, Knightsbridge. These aren't cheap claiming horses that stop running when they get tired.
No, they're grade 1 athletes.
Elite athletes. They have deep stamina reservoirs. They are going to get tired, yes. The lactic acid is going to build up. That is the selective erosion. Their internal clock will slow down. They might go from running a 12-second furlong to a 12.8-second furlong, but they are not going to stop.
Okay, let's look at Crazy Mason then. He is the quintessential anchor. He's an S0 1/1 odds with Manuel Franco. The S0 profile is extreme. He is a pure sustained closer.
Yeah, he wants to be dead last.
The gate opens, and his instinct is to hit the brakes and drop to the tail of the field. And he's good at it. He rallied from 6th to finish 2nd in the Commonwealth Grade 3 at Keeneland. He ran 3rd in the Cigar Mile Grade 2. He makes a living picking off tired horses.
Who does?
But if the leaders are only selectively eroding, if they're only slowing down to 12.8 seconds instead of 14 seconds, what happens to Crazy Mason's math?
The math just collapses on him. Even if Crazy Mason is unleashing a career-best closing kick, he is physically capped at how fast he can cover ground late in a dirt race. Let's say he's flying home running 12.4-second furlongs.
He's moving faster than the leaders, right?
He is. He will visually pass horses in the stretch. But because the leaders didn't completely fall apart, Crazy Mason will simply run out of real estate before he can close the physical gap. He's starting from too far back, and his closing velocity isn't high enough to overcome the selective erosion of elite frontrunners.
It's the housing market fallacy.
Ooh, I like that. Explain.
Let's say you're sitting on a pile of cash, renting a tiny apartment, waiting for the real estate market to completely collapse so you can buy a mansion for pennies on the dollar.
Right.
You're completely committed to the total meltdown scenario. That's Crazy Mason. He's sitting at the back of the pack, hoarding his cardiovascular energy, waiting for the pace to totally self-destruct.
But it doesn't.
No, the market doesn't crash. It just softens. Prices dip a few percentage points. The leaders get tired, but they don't stop. So you end up missing out entirely, stranded in your apartment with your cash because you built your entire strategy around a catastrophic collapse that the underlying economic structure, or in this case, the grade 1 class of the field insured, was never going to happen.
That is a perfect analogy. The closer illusion traps so many bettors in high-stakes races. They see the fast early pace and assume a closer is an automatic mathematical certainty, but they ignore the class of the speed.
Right.
And this exact logic applies to the other major anchor in the field, Hall of Fame. He's a P0 run style, 201 odds, ridden by Jose L. Ortiz, trained by Steve Asmussen.
Hall of Fame is fascinating because on paper, his pedigree and history command massive respect. This is a $1.4 million purchase. He's sired by Gunrunner, who is arguably the most dominant stamina sire in the country right now.
Unbelievable sire.
He's owned by Claiborne Farm. He has back class 2nd in the New Orleans Classic Grade 2, 3rd in the Alashiba Grade 2. He broke his maiden by 10 lengths at Fairgrounds. If you're just looking at names and past glories, you might convince yourself he's the sleeper.
But the current data profile is ruthlessly unsupportive. First, he is dealing with the geometry problem as a P0. He's going to be far back, relying on the same phantom collapse that Crazy Mason is waiting for.
Right.
Second, and far more critically, he has been off the track for over 9 months. His last start was a 4th-place finish in the San Diego Handicap last July.
That's a huge layoff.
Trying to run down razor-sharp, race-fit Grade 1 sprinters after a 9-month vacation is a physiological mountain. And the trainer stats confirm it. Steve Asmussen is a Hall of Famer, but his numbers, with horses returning from 90-plus day layoffs, show a sharp drop in win percentage down to 15%, with a deeply negative return on investment.
So the environment is just too hostile for a comeback.
Yeah,
And we can throw Banishing into the same bucket, right?
definitely.
He's a P2 at 121 odds with Tyler Gaffalione. He's coming off a win in the Godolphin Mile Grade 2 in Dubai, which sounds exotic and impressive. But the report flags him as lacking the requisite finishing punch.
Vanishing is a grinder. The P2 profile means he'll sit mid-pack, which is positionally better than the S0 horses, but he doesn't have the explosive turn of foot required to exploit the selective erosion.
He's just got a one-paced.
Exactly. Before his Dubai trip, he earned an 87 speed figure in the Pegasus World Cup Invitational. You cannot bring an 87 speed figure to a race where the top contenders are consistently throwing down numbers in the mid to high 100s. He's bringing a dull axe to a fight that requires a scalpel.
Okay, let's take stock of the battlefield here. The pure speed point Dume is going to destroy himself trying to cross over from post 11. The fastest horse on paper, Cornucopian, is going to burn out his transmission defending the rail from post 2.
Yep.
The deep closers, Crazy Mason and Hall of Fame, are going to run out of track, chasing a collapse that won't happen. The front is a literal trap, and the back is a mathematical illusion.
Which leaves us with the middle.
Exactly. This brings us to the core thesis of the Racing Form report. The race will be decided in what they call the Goldilocks zone, the compression core,
I love that term.
the horses that sit just off the suicide pact but far ahead of the anchors. And this is where we find the two highest-rated horses in the Brisnet Prime Power algorithm. Now, the Prime Power rating is arguably the most predictive composite metric in the sport. It doesn't just look at how fast a horse ran in a vacuum.
What does it factor in?
It uses a proprietary algorithm to synthesize class, speed, pace parameters, current form, and weight carried. It weighs all of those variables and spits out a unified ranking. And in this field, two horses stand head and shoulders above the rest. Knightsbridge is ranked first at 151.5. Imagination is ranked second at 151.1.
Wow, so close.
It's tight. But there is a steep cliff down to the third horse, Disco Time, at 148.6. The geometry dictates that this race runs explicitly through Knightsbridge and Imagination.
Let's break down the favorite. Knightsbridge, he's 95 odds, ridden by Junior Alvarado, trained by Bill Mott for the Godolphin Powerhouse. His profile is just flawless. He has 8 lifetime starts, 6 wins, 1 second, 1 third. He has literally never run a bad race.
He's a machine.
He won the Gulfstream Park Mile Grade 3, the Fred Hooper Grade 3, and the Mr. Prospector Grade 3. But I want to focus on how he wins because his profile is an EP4. And the EP4 profile is exactly what the 1.22 impact value at Churchill Downs demands. In the Gulfstream Park Mile, he didn't fight for the early lead.
Right, he just let them go?
He let the pace go, sat comfortably in third while they ran a sharp 45.1 second half mile, and then effortlessly took over to earn a 1:5 speed figure. In the Fred Hooper, he proved he can handle adversity. He was caught 2 to 3 paths wide, engaged in a battle, but still dug in and won with a 1:03 speed figure.
He doesn't need the lead?
He does not need to dictate the pace to win. He is completely comfortable absorbing the pressure of the slipstream. The report actually crowns him the textbook geometry horse for this exact pressure cooker.
The phrase the report uses that I find totally fascinating is first run strike. It says Knightsbridge is perfectly positioned to execute the first run strike. Walk me through the mechanics of that. What is happening on the track when a horse executes that move?
To understand the first run strike, if we connect this to the bigger picture, we have to look at the phase of the race the report identifies as mid-race, stress compression.
Okay, when does that happen?
This happens right as the field hits the turn at the 5/16 pole. Point Doom has emptied his tank. Cornucopian is flooded with lactic acid. Their strides are shortening. As the leaders decelerate, the horses stalking them physically catch up.
The field basically squishes together.
Exactly. The field compresses. The distance between first place and fifth place might shrink down to just 2 lengths.
It's a claustrophobic nightmare for the jockeys. You have 1,000-pound animals bunched tightly together, dirt kicking back, lungs burning, and everyone's looking for an escape route before the closers start making their move.
Exactly. In a race that lacks a dominant runaway leader, the dynamic shifts to reaction time. The horse that makes the first decisive tactical move out of that compressed stalking pack almost always wins.
It's all about timing.
If a jockey waits too long, they get trapped behind the fading speed horses, or they get swallowed up by the closers arriving from the back. If they move too early, they prematurely join the duel and get cooked themselves. It requires absolute surgical timing.
So what does this all mean for Knightsbridge? He's perfectly drawn to execute it, right?
Perfect.
He's in post 6. He's right in the middle of the track. Junior Alvarado doesn't have to protect the rail like Cornucopian, and he doesn't have to bomb across the track like Point Dume. He can just brake cleanly and establish a panoramic view of the chaos unfolding in front of him.
He will be sitting in the pocket, likely in third or fourth position on the outside. Junior Alvarado is an elite judge of pace. He will literally feel the air change. He will see Cornucopian's head drop slightly. He will see Point Dume start to paddle.
He waits for that exact moment.
And the absolute microsecond that selective erosion sets in, Alvarado will pull the trigger. He won't wait for the stretch. He will initiate the first run strike at the top of the turn, bursting out of the compression core to seize the lead before the closers even realize the race has structurally shifted.
That is why the raw numbers are a trap. The public is going to stare at Cornucopian's 107 speed figure and throw their money at it, completely oblivious to the fact that Cornucopian has to survive a meat grinder just to stay on his feet.
They're buying fool's gold.
They will miss the structural perfection of Knightsbridge. He is the Goldilocks horse. His EP4 style is aggressive enough to stay ahead of the closers, but tractable enough to avoid the suicide duel. He's the physical embodiment of the track bias.
He really is.
But we can't ignore the other half of the prime power equation.
Yeah.
Imagination. He's sitting right there at 151.1. Trained by Baffert, ridden by Flavien Prat. This is a horse that went to Saudi Arabia and won the Riyadh Dirt Sprint Grade 2 and ran second in the Breeders' Cup Sprint Grade 1.
He's a monster.
He's a monster in his own right. The report designates him as the value play.
Yep.
So how does his profile differ from Knightsbridge in a way that creates value?
The divergence is in the run style. Imagination is a P3. He's a presser. He naturally wants to sit just a half beat further back than an EP horse. If Knightsbridge is sitting in third or fourth during that early scramble, Imagination is going to be sitting in fifth or sixth. He is stationed just slightly behind the absolute epicenter of the chaos, and he has Flavien Prat aboard, who is arguably the most patient, ice-cold rider in the world when it comes to timing a late run.
So if Knightsbridge is the first run strike, Imagination is the counterpuncher.
Precisely. The report notes that Imagination becomes the most likely winner if the pace leans hotter than the model's project.
If they just completely lose their minds up front.
Exactly. If Edwin Gonzalez on Point Dume and Juan Hernandez on Cornucopian completely lose their minds and rip off a suicidal 43-second half mile, the blast radius of that duel might be wide enough to clip Knightsbridge.
Oh, Knightsbridge gets caught in it.
Right. If Knightsbridge gets pulled into the undertow of a historic meltdown, Imagination is perfectly insulated in fifth place. Prat will let Knightsbridge make the premature move, use him as a target, and run him down late.
But the report ultimately ranks Knightsbridge ahead of Imagination for the top spot. It doesn't predict the historic meltdown.
And that circles right back to the bedrock data we started with. The Churchill Downs track bias. The EP style has an impact value of 1.22, winning 38% of the time. The P style, which Imagination relies on, has an impact value of 1.25, but only wins 23% of the time.
So the math still favors the EP.
Heavily. The historical math heavily dictates that the EP horse gets the jump and holds off the P horse. Imagination is incredibly dangerous, but his optimal trip requires the front runners to make a catastrophic mistake. Knightsbridge's optimal trip relies entirely on his own execution.
Before we lock in the final projections, I want to address the satellites. These are the trip-dependent horses hovering on the edges of the core. The most prominent one is Disco Time.
Yeah, Disco Time.
He's an EP1 sitting at 61 odds with John Velazquez for Craner Brad Cox. He has a sneaky high prime power of a 148.6, placing him third overall. He ran second to Disruptor in the Challenger Grade 3. Why is he relegated to satellite status?
Because the EP1 profile lacks tactical autonomy. An EP1 has enough speed to not get left behind, but not enough speed to dictate position. He will naturally settle on the inside, right behind Cornucopian.
And a rail.
Yeah, he's going to be drafting. And while that saves ground and conserves energy, the report bluntly states he needs a seam.
Let's translate that away from the racetrack cliches. What it actually means is that Disco Time's entire fate is at the mercy of the horses in front of him.
100%.
As they enter the stretch, if Cornucopian tires and backs up into him, Disco Time has to hit the brakes. If the horses on his outside hold a tight formation, he's trapped in a box. John Velazquez is going to be sitting on a horse with plenty of energy, praying that a physical gap magically appears in a wall of exhausted, drifting horses.
That is the absolute definition of trip dependent. You are banking on luck. Contrast that with Knightsbridge. By operating on the outside and initiating the first run strike, Junior Alvarado creates his own luck.
He makes the move on his terms.
He decides when the race starts. Velasquez has to wait for the race to open up for him. In $1 million Grade 1, betting on a seam to open is a fast way to lose your bankroll.
We've broken down the track bias, we've analyzed the geometry of the starting gate, we've watched the pure speed trap itself, the closers chase ghosts, and the compression core take control. Now, I want to pull all of this intense data together into a cohesive, second-by-second projection.
Let's play it out.
We are going to visualize exactly how these 7 furlongs are going to unfold on the dirt according to the strict parameters of the Racing Form Report.
It begins the moment the latch springs on the starting gate. The break. From the far outside, post 11, Point Dumais is asked for maximum effort immediately. Edwin Gonzalez is driving him hard, cutting diagonally across the track.
Like a heat-seeking missile.
Down on the rail, post 2, Cornucopian's jockey, Juan Hernandez, recognizes the threat instantly. He cannot yield the rail. He scrubs Cornucopian, forcing him into a high-speed defensive posture. Disruptor breaks sharply from post 5, and Irad Ortiz glues him to Cornucopian's outside hip, ratcheting up the pressure.
Meanwhile, Junior Alvarado on Knightsbridge, in post 6, breaks cleanly. He feels the turbulence developing to his inside, but he doesn't engage. He takes a tactical hold, establishing a flawless stalking position 2 lengths behind the three-way war.
Perfect positioning.
Flavian Prat on Imagination settles right into Knightsbridge's slipstream. And far behind them, Crazy Mason and Hall of Fame willingly detach from the pack, dropping to the rear.
They hit the backstretch, and the pace is hot. The Ferrari and the Lamborghini are locked in a grudge match. As they approach the turn, the 5/16th pole, the physical reality of the pressure cooker sets in. The fractions take their toll.
The erosion begins.
Right. Point Doom's sheer speed is blunted by the distance. Cornucopian is resenting the sustained rail pressure. Their strides begin to labor. The field experiences mid-race rest compression. The gap between the leaders and the stalkers just evaporates.
And this is the inflection point, mid-stretch. The selective erosion is actively dragging the leaders backward. Junior Alvarado doesn't hesitate. He executes the first-run strike.
There it is.
He tips Knightsbridge out into the clear, avoids the collapsing speed on the rail, and surges to the front. Flavian Prat sees the move and asks Imagination to follow, trying to ride the wave Knightsbridge just created.
Now we enter the final 16th of a mile, light. The early speed is entirely spent. Cornucopian and Point Doom are fading fast. Deep in the back, Crazy Mason is finally deploying his closing kick. He is passing tired horses rapidly, moving from 9th to 7th to 5th.
But the math remains undefeated. The selective erosion means the leaders didn't walk. Crazy Mason is flying, but the finish line arrives too quickly. He runs out of real estate. Out front, Imagination is grinding away, trying to close the gap on Knightsbridge, but the EP track bias holds firm.
It's too strong.
The geometry dictates the victor. Knightsbridge, having weathered the compression and timed his strike perfectly, crosses the wire first. He solves the physics equation of Churchill Downs Race 10.
The analysis points to a singular, definitive conclusion. Knightsbridge is the most advantaged horse in the field. He possesses the class, the optimal run style, the perfect post position, and the tactical versatility to dominate the specific race shape presented.
And the report doesn't just leave us with a pick. It gives us the structural blueprint for how to bet it. The strategy revolves around building an exacta core. You place Knightsbridge on top, explicitly keying him to win. Underneath him, in the second position, you use a spread. Imagination, Disruptor, and Disco Time.
The logic of the ticket mirrors the logic of our analysis. You are isolating the most probable winner. Then you are covering the chaotic fallout of the fading early speed by utilizing the classy stalker in Imagination, the tactical wildcard in Disruptor, or the trip-dependent upside of Disco Time to inherit the runner-up spot.
The report expands this into a trifecta strategy as well. Knightsbridge in the first position, Imagination, Disruptor, and Disco Time in the second position. And then, crucially, you put all horses in the third position.
That's the insurance policy.
Exactly. This is how you protect yourself against the noise. If the pace does get incredibly hot and a closer like Crazy Mason clunks up for a meaningless third-place finish, your ticket survives. If Cornucopian manages to miraculously hold on for third despite the suicidal duel, your ticket survives. You take a firm stand on the winner, and you mathematically hedge the chaos underneath.
It is a totally disciplined, architectural approach to wagering. It completely discards the temptation of betting a single, isolated speed figure in favor of betting the overarching dynamic of the entire field.
Which is really the ultimate takeaway from this entire deep dive. The overarching lesson is that looking at a horse's past performances and circling the biggest speed number is a fundamentally flawed way to analyze a complex system.
Oh, absolutely.
Cornucopian's 107 speed figure is a mathematical fact, sure, but in the context of this specific pressure cooker, it is a dangerous trap. The spatial geometry of the starting gate and the unyielding track bias create an environment where tactical adaptability and positional leverage beat raw theoretical speed every single time.
Because a number on a page is just, it's devoid of context. And in high-stakes competition, context is everything. Understanding the physical and psychological toll required to achieve that number, and recognizing whether the current environment will allow the athlete to replicate it, is where a true analytical edge is actually found. You have to be willing to look past the obvious data point and map the underlying structure.
And that concept stretches so far beyond the dirt at Churchill Downs. Think about how the mechanics of the first run strike and the compression core apply to your own life, your career, your industry.
That's an interesting way to look at it.
We all operate in environments that feel like pressure cookers. Markets are hyper-saturated. Everyone is rushing to the front, trying to be the loudest, the most disruptive, the absolute fastest out of the gate. They are engaging in suicidal duels for immediate attention, burning through their capital and their energy just to hold a fragile lead.
Just like Point Dumi and Cornucopian.
Exactly. You might look at that chaos and think you either have to join the sprint and burn yourself out, or drop out entirely and wait for the whole system to collapse so you can pick up the pieces. But the data tells us both of those extremes are traps.
They are.
Maybe the most advantageous position in a high-stress environment isn't being the absolute fastest right from the start. And it certainly isn't waiting for a total meltdown that may never come. Maybe true power is having the discipline to sit just off the chaos, to preserve your energy while you analyze the stress compression of their competitors, to feel the exact moment they begin to tire when their strides shorten and their vision narrows.
That's when you make your move.
Because when too many people try to control the front with brute force, no one actually does. You step into the world looking for that simple, binary math problem where the biggest number wins. But reality isn't a video game. The ultimate prize doesn't go to the one who runs the fastest in a vacuum. It goes to the one who reads the geometry, waits for the perfect moment of selective erosion, and initiates the strike.